Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Managing Anxiety in the Storm. My name is Dr. Deidre Sorrell, and I am a licensed professional counselor and school psychologist. I am also Mrs. Black Maryland International Ambassador 2020. And in my show, Managing Anxiety in the Storm, we talk about anxiety, of course, and other mental health issues that have relevance to what we are dealing with today. So today I have a special guest. I would like to welcome Miss Shanika Moore Clark. She is a licensed clinical social worker and life coach. She is the owner of Golden Life Counseling and Coaching in Washington, D.C. And today we are going to be talking about postpartum depression. So I'd like to welcome Mrs. Clark. Hello, thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest today. I think that this is such an important topic that we need to talk about. So I'm just really excited to dive into postpartum depression because many of us have been there, we've seen it, we've experienced it, and we definitely need to talk about it.
I agree. It's such it's a taboo topic. It's something that happens, but it's in the shadows, in my opinion. I was recently watching an episode of Insecure, which is a very popular show that comes on. I believe that's HBO, and
Yep.
the series, the season finale dealt with postpartum depression with one of the main characters named Tiffany. And I just really liked how the show addressed it. It didn't get into it in depth. There are a lot more questions, of course, with regard to the character. But that made me really want to talk about this because of its importance and how it was showed on the show with women of color. So could you tell us, Shanika, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do professionally?
Sure. So like you mentioned, I'm a licensed clinical social worker in Washington, D.C., and I own a private practice. I currently have a group practice with 6 therapists that work under my practice, but I also am a therapist, and I typically work with adults, primarily women, though I do see men on occasion, and tend to work with a lot of women of color in particular because I think as a Black therapist, oftentimes other Black women are seeking Black women as therapists because they feel like it's someone that can really, they can identify with them. And so I certainly, take all clients, but I particularly really love working with women of color.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I like that because when people are looking for a therapist, they're looking for who they feel most comfortable with and who understands their journey and who understands their story. So it's glad that there are a diverse selection of therapists out here for our diverse selection of clients.
Absolutely.
So tell me, what is postpartum depression? Is it like what we see in the movies and what we see in the media? Tell us more about it.
Well, before I get into that, just kind of want to set the stage for how this manifests itself. So think about being a new mom and you have just given birth to a baby or several babies. Imagine the hormonal changes that are going on. So after a woman gives birth, typically there's a big drop in hormone, particularly estrogen and progesterone. And so, you have all these hormones that are dropping. You're engorged because your boobs are now ready for breastfeeding. You have a child that is up every couple hours, so you're sleep deprived. You may or may not have the support that you need. And so there's all these changes that are happening to your body in addition to caring for a new life. And so, most women do experience some type of emotional change during this period. For some people, it could be kind of like what we would call like postpartum blues. However, for other women, it's much more pervasive. And what that means is that they experience symptoms that are a lot more significant. So postpartum depression is a period that typically starts, you kind of notice about, a couple weeks, and it can kind of start up to a year after giving birth. And what you'll experience is depression, frequent mood swings, excessive, you're noticing that you're crying a lot. You are having a lot of difficulty concentrating. For some women, they may feel suicidal. And for some women, actually, and we don't talk about this piece, they have thoughts of harming their baby. Not that they want to do anything to their baby, but they're so, their hormones are so dysregulated and they're so sleep deprived that they really have thoughts of harming their baby. And so it really is a period where you experience a lot of emotional changes, a lot of physical changes. And I think that as a result of that, it's really a difficult period, and it can be really significant for many women.
Wow. Yeah, and I really love the way that you described that, and because I watch movies, I watch cable. I'm not going to, say which. I'm not going to shout out any networks, but I watch cable movies, and I noticed that sometimes with these movies they confuse postpartum depression with postpartum psychosis. So I think some people think that they kind of lump all that into one disorder. Can you speak a little bit about the differences?
Yeah, I think that, with postpartum depression, you're kind of noticing more of the anxiety piece, or you can notice the mood swings or the depression. I think psychosis is something very different, where you may see like you're kind of very disconnected from yourself. You are having, with psychosis, you might be hearing things. You're kind of like delusional. And so I think that, they're very different things that one may experience. And I think they should be treated differently.
Absolutely. So I'm glad that we were able to state, here that there is a distinction. It's not postpartum depression. Um, a symptom of that is not the hearing the voices and the seeing things like you would see in a movie. Movies
Right.
often get it wrong and lump it all together, but there are differences between the two.
Absolutely.
So Shanika, tell me how postpartum depression might manifest differently in Black women or women of color as opposed to white women.
Right. So I think that, I don't know that it necessarily looks different. It could look different, but I think that what we need to recognize is that Black women have these risk factors that white women may not have. And so for a lot of Black women, they, the statistics are that we are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. We also are more vulnerable to things like birth trauma. Black women may not have the same access of care, or they may not be treated in the same way that their white women are treated, or women of other races are treated. And so I think that places us more at risk for development postpartum depression. And also, I think that as Black women, we kind of have this long-standing history of being seen as strong Black women. And so I think that when we experience something like postpartum depression, it's really difficult to accept, because as a community, we're expected to just, kind of suck it up and be strong. And so I think that as a result, it really makes us much more vulnerable to experience postpartum depression, and we're not seeking help in the way that we probably should.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with that. I'm glad that you said that. The symptoms are not really different, but it's how they are interpreted by others. So, I have 2 children myself, and I remember just really feeling judged
Right.
by family members, not necessarily my husband. My husband was great,
Right.
but other family members when I was having very human emotions. So
Mm-hmm.
before I had my first child, I um, had a miscarriage, and it was actually a
Mm-hmm.
stillborn, and it hurts me to this day. It was very traumatic for me. And this happened in 2006. I got pregnant with my daughter in
Mm-hmm.
2007, had her in 2008. But I remember being so anxious and so nervous after what during my pregnancy, but also after having her.
Sure.
And I had family members who judged me, didn't understand, was thinking
Mm-hmm.
I was nuts and losing my mind and crazy, and almost like suck it up, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was getting from female family
Wow.
members, not my
Wow.
husband, but it was a
Right.
tough time, and I think they made it worse for me.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean it's real, and unfortunately, I think that we're not well versed in the way that we talk to other women about that, and so as a result, you're left to to feel very isolated, because we're not talking about it the way that we should, and so if we're not feeling like other people can empathize or validate our experience, then we're kind of like left to deal with those emotions on our own.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, next question: how does postpartum depression carry a stigma? Um, when you think about other disorders, you think about mental health disorders, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder. Often when people, state that they have these disorders, and when people are like, I'm struggling with depression and I'm dealing with bipolar, people typically praise them for being strong and coming out and sharing their struggles. But with postpartum depression, does it have its own stigma attached to it?
I think so. I definitely think so. Motherhood is kind of seen like this blissful time, this period where you have the baby, and people will post like, as soon as I met my baby, I fell in love. And we have these perceptions of what it means to be a mom, right? I remember for my own pregnancy and birth of my daughter, who's 2.5 now. I um I didn't feel very connected with my daughter until several weeks after she was born. And I know that that probably sounds weird for some folks, but I really didn't. And I think that period that I was experiencing so many shifts in my hormones. And so for me to say that, I know a lot of folks would probably not admit that, but that was my reality. And so, as a mom, we have to be prepared that it's a big adjustment.
Mm,
And I think that people place a stigma on it because there's an ideal of what motherhood, should be like. And so we can't fall into the trap that, we're not going to have multiple feelings. Like we can experience great love for a child, but we can also experience, emotional, we can experience other thoughts, right? Together. And so I can really love my baby, but I can also be frustrated, or I can also feel some level of sadness, or, and so there's lots of guilt over having feelings outside of bliss when you first become a mom.
right, right, exactly. And I think back to the episode of Insecure with Tiffany. And what happened with Tiffany, she just had this baby. She had this lavish baby shower, right? It was just out of this
Right.
world, right? Then she had this baby, and of course her friends were around. Her husband was there and everything, but she didn't seem to connect with the baby as you would as one would have expected. And then one
Hmm.
day she said she was going, I think, to the movies or something, and she just left. Husband
Hmm.
was looking for her, friends were looking for her. They ended up finding her in a hotel room, and she just said,
Hmm.
I just needed a break.
Hmm.
And they showed her, and she had this towel on her head, towel around her. it appeared that she was just taking a shower or something like that. And I was thinking to
Right.
myself, like, you know, yes, this does look like postpartum depression, but how long did she just need a break just to take a
Right.
shower and
Hmm.
wasn't given that opportunity and
Right. Right.
snapped, just snapped. And people who, sometimes, people who don't have children might think, of course you can take a shower. You just get in there and take it. But as a new mom, sometimes you can't take a shower.
Right, right. I mean, if the baby is fussing, then you're going to tend to the baby, and so that's why it's so important that we have social supports, and that's not always easy, right? Because you might have family that are not around, but it really is important to have friends that show up for you, or if you do have family that can say, hey, let me come over and hold the baby while you go and take a quick nap, or hold the baby while you go and do something for yourself.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how can postpartum depression be prevented? Um, and then, how can it be treated as well?
Yeah, yeah. So I think that we can't always prevent it, but there's certainly things that I think makes a woman more vulnerable or more at risk for that. And so things like lack of support, breastfeeding difficulties, someone that may have a history of depression or anxiety already, someone that has a history of severe PMS, perhaps someone that has really perfectionistic personality that feels like they have to be a perfect mom. I think that it's important to kind of during pregnancy to have your support network, and really try to connect with other moms if you can, educate yourself, and maybe even finding a therapist while you are pregnant, so that you'll have someone that you can talk to about the changes, someone that can help you to manage those feelings, manage the expectations, and things like that. I think that, even if you're someone that may be married, a couple that, is experiencing marital stress, that could also lead to postpartum depression. So, maybe even having, some sessions as a couple as well to help prepare for that adjustment of parenthood, because it really is a really transitional time for someone. Single moms, I know that they struggle significantly. And
Yeah.
so it's really going to be important for them to try to have access to other support systems. When I had my daughter, one of the things that was helpful for me, I have family, but they're not close by. And so I really try to lean on the online community. I was able to find other moms that were connected. And so we would, talk about what was going on. We would share ideas, get information. So really building a support network, I think, is very important. But I always say therapy is one of those things that you might need to connect with a therapist, because they can help you to learn the language. How do I seek support? How do I challenge certain thoughts about what I think motherhood is? How do I develop self-care routines? Those kinds of things are very important.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, I agree. And as you were talking, I kind of had this thought in my mind, almost like a fantasy in a sense, that it would be so great if hospitals partnered with therapists to
Mm,
have a therapist, or a few therapists to come in and meet women after they've had a baby, just to say hi, just to say what
yeah.
they do. And that the hospital then provide the information for that therapist, or a list of therapists, in that
Mhm.
packet that you get the little packet where, okay, you can take pictures, and here's this, here's that, but you get a list of therapists so that okay, let me reach out to this person. I met this person. They're not scary. They seem nice.
Yes.
Just so women know they have support.
Yes. Yeah, I love that idea. I think that's kind of, the it takes a village. So having a network of care, I think, is definitely a great idea. So maybe that's something that you can suggest or get going, because I think a lot of women would benefit from that.
Yeah, I think so. There are a lot of I think the healthcare is an area that really needs a lot of improvement, especially with how Black women are treated.
Hmm.
That's another show
Absolutely.
right there.
Right, right. Oh my gosh, yes. Hmm. Hmm.
So, but I do
Yeah,
think it does start. It starts there though with
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. So how can people reach out to you if they would like to get more information about therapy or just more information about postpartum depression in general?
Sure. They can reach me at www.goldenlifecounselingandcoaching.com. And I'm also on Instagram at Shanika Moore, LICSW, and also on Facebook as Golden Life Counseling as well.
All right, wonderful. All right. Well, Shanika, do you have any last words before we end our show?
First of all, I want to reiterate to you that what a blessing it is that you're doing this and bringing awareness for mental health challenges and issues. We need these conversations, and I'm so glad that you are having these conversations. Number one. Number two, I really just want women to know, especially Black women, that you're not alone. That if you are having challenges, if you are experiencing emotional challenges, if you are feeling depressed, if you have a baby and you're having these feelings, that you're really not alone. And that, it's okay to seek support. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to, the idea of the strong Black woman, we have to kind of rethink what that really means. And asking for help is not a sign of weakness. And at the end of the day, the happier you are and the more that you take care of yourself, the better mom that you will be. And so in the end, your child will thank you. So I'm just really glad that we had this opportunity to talk about postpartum depression. And I hope that this conversation will continue.
Well, Shanika, I just want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this and for lending your expertise. This is a topic, like you said before, it's just not talked about. And it's time to just pull it out of the shadows. So
Mhm.
I just want to thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. And hopefully we can have maybe a part two down the line because I can definitely see this, encouraging more discussions about the topic. So.
Well, I am available. Just let me know when.
All right. Well, thank you. And I just want to thank all of you for tuning in to another episode of Managing Anxiety in the Storm. Again, my name is Dr. Deidre Sorrell. I am a licensed professional counselor, school psychologist, but also Mrs. Black Maryland International Ambassador
Woo-hoo.
2020. Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
I'm so excited about it. It's with this. This is an amazing pageant system because what we do is we focus on being change agents and we focus on social justice, and that's what I am so into. So it's more than just wearing a dress and a crown. It's about really making that impact in the community, and this is how I want to make my impact. The pageant is in 2021, so I have plenty of time to work on my platform, and then prayerfully in 2021, we will have really gotten to the other side of this coronavirus, uh,
Yes.
you know, crisis, and we'll be able to have, normal life. So,
Right. Absolutely.
all right. Well, thanks again, and thank you all for watching. And I'll see you all again soon from my next episode of Managing Anxiety in the Storm. Take care and be well. Bye bye.
Bye.